everybody. Happy Monday. It's the week of the FAB. And today I've got Lee again. I was just talking through our usual coffee chats where we don't drink coffee about all things bookkeeping and accountancy related. So I've got my lemon and ginger tea in my QuickBooks cup that I will show you all here. What have you got to drink today, Lee?
I have nothing to drink. I drank I had a Vimto before I came on, so.
Oh, that'll do. That'll do.
There's not even.
Oh no. What's the weather like where you are today?
It's pretty miserable. Standard weather for where we are. We've got like overcast skies. It's not too cold, not too windy or anything, so I can't complain.
No, exactly the same over this end. Now I'm just going to switch this over here a sec. There we go. So today, me and Lee are just going to be talking through some of the options that you have, sort of the career paths that you can take after studying the likes of the CPAA. So what you can do with that qualification and where you can take it, which should be quite interesting because when I was studying, I actually had no idea of all the different things that you could do, even outside of bookkeeping and accounting, if you wanted to, with your qualifications. So yeah, I'm just excited to lead into that, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really big profession, accountancy. We talk about it as one thing, but it's actually, a lot of different things that you can get involved in. Whether you just your fairly traditional stuff, whether you're talking like audit versus tax versus kind of your bookkeeping, accounts prep, or newer things that accountants are involved in now, such as like risk management and performance management and stuff like that. So there's a massive scope, and I think that's one of the reasons that it can be quite daunting when you're looking at the qualification market, because there's so many different qualifications that are all kind of tailored slightly to different niches of what accountancy is. So yeah, I mean, the CPAA qualifications are obviously much more focused at small practitioners. So if you're kind of thinking about, we use the term micro practitioner. So typically you're kind of sole practitioner like yourself, or kind of somebody who's built up a small practice with maybe a handful of staff. CPA qualifications are really tailored to people working in that kind of environment. So again, they're designed to try and equip you with kind of broad range of skills that you need in that kind of environment, because there's not an IT team, there's not a HR team, there's just kind of a small group, or even just one accountant doing everything. That's what our qualifications are very much designed for. So I always say to people, we get people that are interested, and they might have visions of working at KPMG or in a very big practice or in a big firm. And I think this isn't right for you. This isn't what we're offering. But if you are looking to eventually maybe set up your own small practice, or you want to work in a small practice environment, then the CPA qualifications are really tailored to what you're looking at there. So
yeah, and I think I'll give you a bit of scope behind this, because about I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, my partner said to me, why don't you just go ahead and open up an accountancy practice and run on your own? And my response was, I have no idea how to do that. I don't know where to find clients. I don't understand, insurance and basically the red tape element. I didn't get it. There was nowhere at that time really that gave you that information. There wasn't communities that you could join to ask those questions. It was very much that sort of, I guess, an era where, knowledge is power and nobody wants to share that with you, which is the complete opposite these days. But now, the CPAA, you've got blogs, you've got the community, you've got the helpline.
So yeah, I mean, like we often get people approaching us that are looking to set up. So they're perhaps already qualified accountants, but like you said, you can have gone through your ACA or your ACCA or whatever qualification you've picked to go through, and you can then think, right, I want to set up in practice, but I don't know what my first move is. What should I do first? Do I get the insurance first? Do I need to set up a limited company? Do I need to register as a tax agent? Where do I advertise? How do I get clients? So we get those kind of questions all the time, and I hope we're quite good at supporting people through those kind of initial steps and initial kind of ideas as to what you should be doing. But it can be quite daunting, because like you said, I mean, when you work somewhere, you could be doing something very focused, whether it's audit or you're just putting together those financial statements, and you don't see the full picture. You don't see what's going on. You regulatory side, the compliance stuff that you have to jump through. You know, I mean, it's things like, do you know that you need to go and register with the ICO as a data processor?
Not many people know that one. That always comes up.
And how do you do that? And then what kind of ongoing requirements are there to that? You know, it's things like the money laundering. How do I get supervised for money laundering? A lot of people end up facing questions around practicing certificates. Who can I get a practicing certificate with? Do I need one? You know, will I qualify for one with my current professional body? There's a load of questions that you need to kind of answer, and a lot of things you need to be prepared for. I mean, one of the pillars on the CPA qualification structure is around ethics and compliance. And when we developed that, a big focus was the kind of compliance needs of those small practitioners. So it's making sure that you know how data protection legislation applies to a small practice, how AML applies to a small practice, how your professional body might be interacting with you, how tax investigations work, and how you can support clients through those. So it's really those kind of, that entire kind of pillar of the exam structure is really about the kind of periphery compliance stuff that you don't come into contact with.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I don't know. I'll be brutally honest and tell you what my thought process was even back then around starting a practice. Was that I almost had a bit of shame. I know it's going to sound really daft, but I had a bit of shame that I'd worked in bookkeeping and accounting for so long, worked in practice and also worked in industry. And yet, when it came down to it and looking at things like, you know, should I set up as a limited company or should I set up as a sole trader? I felt a little bit like a fraud because, you know, I'd been advising clients all those years on different elements of running a business. But at that point in time, I'd never actually ran my own business. I've been part of other businesses and other projects. But I felt like a little bit of a fraud that I didn't have all of the answers there and then. And it really did put me off setting up all those years back, which I could have done. And it could be a different story today. But I'm glad I've made the leap now. But I think you really need a professional body like yourselves who are going to be able to answer those questions and not make you feel like that, really. Which I do even now, speaking to quite a lot of bookkeepers and accountants, it does put you off, definitely. But it's okay to feel that way.
It's almost like starting a new job, but there's no onboarding process. There's nobody there to kind of guide you through. There's nobody there to help you or ask questions of. You just kind of left your own devices, and it is daunting. There's a lot of different organisations you have to deal with, a lot of different bits of legislation you have to deal with, as well as getting your technical knowledge up, because there's bits of technical knowledge you need that you've not used for potentially many years that you need to make sure you're up to date with. And it can feel quite, like you said, you can get a bit of imposter syndrome where you're a bit like, oh, am I actually capable? Am I actually cut out to do this? But I mean, you know, there are plenty of people that are doing it as sole practitioners. It is absolutely possible, and you can build a thriving business. It's just knowing how to get there, how to set it up.
Yeah, and I think also, even now I spend a lot of time listening to others who have been there and done that. I don't look at the PwCs and the KPMGs. I look at the Rachel Harrises, the Stuart Hurst, you know, the Gravitate Accounting, all of those that are doing it right now, who started from scratch, not, you know, 7 years ago, 3 years ago. And I try and look at what they're doing and try and apply that in my own practice. So I'm always listening, thinking, how can I improve? What can I change? What can I do differently? But what I'll say is that every single practice is different, and you've got to make it work around you. You could almost create a second job for yourself if you were to continue doing what you're doing in your work and just taking on things and just doing the doing. You've got to look outside of that if you want to go ahead and start working on your own. It's like we talk about it all the time, but that employer mindset I had to learn. And the first year of business, as I said before, was such a learning curve. But again, you know, the community that's built around the CPAA and those that are working and the information that is out there for you to read at your own leisure too, on the webinars, etc., that you have, all assist greatly. And again, maybe 7 years ago, it would have been a different story if I'd known or had that information there at the time.
Yeah, and I mean, it's if anybody is thinking about setting up, it's always, I think, best to try and think it through, like sit down and like weigh it up, because there's lots of costs. There are overheads that you don't really think of. I mean, if you factor in like your professional body fees for a practicing certificate, you factor in your ICO registration, any kind of AML costs, and then the kind of hidden compliance fees, like you need to do your AML training, where you source that from, what's the cost of that? Weigh that up and think it through. What do I need to do? What do I need in place? How can I put it in place? Could I do it before I've even sort of took the plunge and start putting these things together? We've got plenty of people, plenty of members that have just fell into practice. Like they were employed somewhere, they got made redundant, and it was a kind of stopgap measure of like, I'm going to take on a few clients just to try and keep the bills paid, and then it's just spiraled and become a practice. And quite often those are the people that are then like 3 years down the line going like, I didn't think through this AML policy. I just pulled it off the internet and it's rubbish and it doesn't work. And I now need to like spend a few days and lots of time and effort trying to get it right. So yeah, it is one that's always worth thinking through, and it's possible to get the answers to all those questions, to start getting things set up.
Yeah. But I'll say as well, just touching on, because I know a lot of people like to know, I guess the salary aspect of working for yourself. And it's almost unlimited, because you can, as you say, you could take on 100 clients and work every single hour under the sun if you wanted to, or you can employ staff or subcontractors to cover that work, or you might just be happy to do, 9 till 3 o'clock, work around the children. There's a lot of flexibility. But the one key recurring topic that always comes up when you're running your practice is making sure you're pricing right. That you do get wrong to begin with, because you want clients through the door, but there's a whole topic on that we could cover. So what else can you do then, Lee, with a CPA qualifications in terms of job roles, would you say?
Sure. So like the qualification is currently on 2 stages, but it will eventually be on a 3rd stage. But those stages correspond to kind of roles. So stage 1 is like a equivalent to kind of a bookkeeper within a practice. Stage 2, a kind of accounts assistant, a junior accountant role, and then stage 3 is the kind of full practitioner course. So it very much builds on your knowledge. So like stage 1 is very much your double entry right up to kind of trial balance, introducing gently ideas around tax and what different taxes are and how they're implemented, and then introducing you to some of the compliance aspects like the data protection and things like that you need awareness of as a bookkeeper. And then the second stage is very much kind of your more financial reporting, accounts preparation and all the rest of it. And then the practitioner stage is very much all the periphery stuff that you need, as well as more kind of advanced tax knowledge. So yeah, it's a full spectrum. We do kind of, again, within that practice setting, that small practice setting, it's everything from, if you want to be a bookkeeper, to working in there as a junior accountant, to kind of setting up your own practice, or maybe even with aspirations to become a partner within an existing practice. The qualification structure is designed to follow you through your kind of career in that regard.
Yeah, what I find always interesting is, and you might not actually know this about me, Lee, but before, so when I was a lot younger, I always said to my mum I wanted to be an accountant, even before I knew what an accountant was, because it paid well, I'd heard. But the reason for becoming an accountant was not to do the double entry, etc. It was because I wanted to have that commercial acumen so that I could run my own business. And when I initially entered the profession, it was to run a business in a different industry, not bookkeeping and accounting. So I wanted to get that commercial acumen first. But then, things have progressed, and I actually enjoy working with clients and helping them and budget and forecast, all things money related. I love talking about the money stuff. And seeing a business go from down here to up here with implemented controls and all sorts of things. It's such a nice thing to be part of that journey with clients that you don't, again, it's not something that I considered when I got into the profession. And everything that I talk to clients about now, I learn as much from them as they learn from me. and I can implement that daily. And I do, again, I'm always up for changing. I don't think I'm the perfect specimen. I think there's lots of things you can change to get to a different place, really. But it's funny that I don't think that even that is talked about enough, that you're not just, it's not a one-sided conversation with clients.
No, it can be, from my sort of experience, it can be quite, it depends on the practitioner, it depends on the client. So you always have people that just want you to churn out the compliance. They want you to get the self-assessment in, do the corporation tax return, file the accounts at company size, so they don't have to think about it, and they are not interested in further input.
Yeah.
And it, like you said, there's some practitioners that are quite happy to do that. Their role, as they see it, is a kind of compliance sort of person that starts out there doing all the financial compliance for the business. And then there are lots of practitioners. I'd say this is the growing sector of the market. There's more and more people entering into it with this mindset. I want to actively try and support my clients and offer them insight and advice and general kind of business support as well, so that they can build up their business and grow. And I would say that's the growing sector, and I think that's something that clients are increasingly expecting their accountants to do, is to offer advice and insight that they're not able to kind of provide themselves. Like I said, you're in a very unique position. You're working with lots of different businesses, so you can pull in a bit of knowledge that they did that really well. That's how they sorted that problem out. So I can then use that to advise another client.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's brilliant. And I didn't know that you didn't want to be an accountant.
No, it was again, it was literally because, again, I was 8 or 9 years old, and you get asked at school, what do you want to be? And I was like, yeah, an accountant, because they earn a lot of money. And then later it was because I wanted the commercial knowledge in order to run a business. But I will say this hand on heart, that in my early years I was almost pigeonholed down the financial reporting route, because I was very good at the financial reporting element side of things. So the tax compliance, the year end, the FRS 102, the IFRS, the UK GAAP, it's all up there. I think I've said this before, my short-term memory sucks, but my long-term memory, I can remember, a single day, I can remember what the weather was on that day, that sort of thing. So I remember text, I remember quite a lot of things. I'm very visual like that. So naturally, I was very good at that sort of role. But where I fell down was the commercial aspect, which was the reason I went into it in the first place, which was why I actually ended my practice career to move into industry, because I just felt like this was it. And whilst that was great for other people, and people make a lot of money, have a successful career, love their job, it wasn't for me. So I thought I need to do something drastic. And everybody was shocked, actually. All of my team were like, what are you doing? You've got a career trajectory here to, FD. You could just keep going, doing what you're doing. You could be partner. And I thought, it's just not for me. I don't want to do that. I need to learn how to run a business. So yeah, got into industry and just started asking tons of questions, realized that my commercial knowledge was about this big. Maybe, no, in fact, let's make it smaller. This big when I first changed over. But yeah, I'd say the last 8 years of my career, both running this business and also working in industry, I've learned more than my entire career combined, definitely. Yeah.
It's interesting as well when you look at how the qualifications are adapting to that mindset as well. I would imagine you're not alone, and that a lot of accountants are going into it not because they want to specialize in regurgitating IFRSs or IASs or whatever, and there's an increased focus on, like, we need to raise general business awareness and raise commercial acumen with accounts, especially with the rise of technology. A lot of that kind of churning, making sure the accounts are compliant, making sure that the tax is right. A lot of that is automated and will increase. The automation is just going to keep increasing. So your value as an accountant is increasingly, well, what can I do with this information? How can I then advise clients? How can I support them to grow and build their businesses?
I think nowadays it's not, as you say, it's not sufficient to be a technical accountant and that's the end of the road. I think if you want to grow and you either want to work for yourself or you want to get to that next position in, your employment, you've got to have two things. So you've got to be pragmatic, so be able to adapt to any situation. So make, the best of a situation, or look outside the box and adapt quickly. So not, I've worked with FDs in the past and CFOs who are beyond stuck in their ways. And because they've invested so much into 3 years of going down the wrong route, they think another 3 years is going to fix everything. You think, no, it ain't. So pragmatism, and also value add. So if you can add value to anything, whether it's cost saving or it's time saving, or again, the use of AI, then you're going to put yourself up here in terms of your credibility, knowledge, becoming an expert in a particular field, and also your employability if you want to go down that route, or self-employment. But you can't, it's just no longer sufficient to be able to regurgitate the standards. And
quite a few parallels almost between the way company secretaries used to be. So company secretarial roles were a thing. That's what you did. Like, it was a dedicated person within a company that would be responsible for certain kind of regulatory needs. And then obviously with the changing the Companies Act, that role became much more diminished. And suddenly people that were company secretaries had to very much kind of reinvent themselves as, providing more generalized governance support and advice. That you see them take on like IT roles and more general kind of compliance roles with data protection and all the rest of it. And I think accountants are getting to that point where there's almost a paradigm shift in what it means to be an accountant, and that the old ways of kind of, we're just compliance people, we're just, form fillers and box tickers, that's going to very quickly disappear over the next few years.
Yeah, and let's shall we talk about the fun stuff, which everybody usually wants to know the answer to? So, again, this chair is way more squeaky than the last chair. It's crazy. So in terms of salary output and expectations, what, in your opinion now, let's say around the north, because in London you're always going to get at least 10% more because it's London and you've got the cost of living down there, which is higher. But what would you say somebody now who is qualified, with, let's just say, the first 3 years of their accountancy qualification under their belt and 3 years experience, up to 3 years, what would you say on average is the salary expectations in the north now for that? I can give you mine.
Go on, you give me yours, because CPAA obviously focuses more on self-employed accountants. I do have my figures up from our last annual return to give you some insight on that, but in terms of employment, go on.
The average, so when I was studying, right, the average back then was 19.5 for newly qualified and 22 to 25 for up to the first 3 years. Now it's 29 to 35.
Honestly, not as high as I thought that was going to be for an employed role.
Yeah, that's up to the first 3 years. So thereafter, thereafter you could expect anywhere from about 35 to 55k the first 5 to 7 years of qualification easily.
The regional disparity is also very, like you said, that's very apparent. It was interesting. I was having a conversation with a member a few months ago, and he's actually downsized. So he had quite a large practice, and he decided, he was doing the sort of calculation, decided that actually it wasn't really worth it to manage all the staff and everything, and that he very much downsized. It's become like a bit of a family firm now. So they don't really have any staff anymore. But he was sort of explaining that they were down just outside of London, and he was saying that the kind of salary expectation just kept growing and growing and growing, and that as a small firm he was really struggling because he was then facing a choice of, I'm going to have to start putting my fees up more and more, and it's going to become uncompetitive. So he took that decision that actually it wasn't really worth paying the increased salary costs. But yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. I did think that might have been a bit higher, but I can give you a bit of insight on our members in terms of self-employment, if that's kind of a route people are looking at. So an average CPA member at our last kind of annual return, which is where we collect lots of information on our members, average fee income was between just shy of 172,000 per member. So that's the average. When we kind of spread that across mode income brackets, most of our members are the most common income bracket was between 70 and 80,000 in turnover. So that, a bit of insight into where CPA members kind of sit. I know a lot of our members are fairly established practitioners, but they are predominantly sole practitioners, so they are people that are working for themselves.
Yeah.
So it's certainly, I would say there's potential to earn quite a bit if you decided you wanted to take that plunge and go self-employed as opposed to staying in employment. But then, of course, you are taking on the rest of the risks, aren't you?
That's the other element.
Yeah.
But then, but alongside the cons, if you want to call them cons, you got flexibility of working for yourself. You're seeing something grow. You get to make all the decisions, right or wrong. And also, it's just fun to see where you can take it, I guess. But the scope for growth, because you will always need bookkeepers and accountants, and AI is not going to replace bookkeepers and accountants. I keep seeing that question a lot. It's not. It cannot make decisions. For one, but
have you tried giving ChatGPT some tax questions?
Yes, I have.
It's not very good.
No, and also
hilarious some of the things that it comes out with. Even if it can get the kind of general theory correct, it'll then do the calculation just totally off the wall, and you're like.
There was a tax version of this actually that I tried out, but it's not. It doesn't know enough yet to give you any kind of indication of anything really. So I did try. I thought, oh well, that'd be great. But no, it's not, and it's never going to replace bookkeepers and accountants, because even if it was to take on some of the more manual entry sort of roles, where you've got scanning receipts instead of somebody going to the photocopier and scanning that through, or analysing data based on past trends, you're always going to have that ad hoc invoice that 99% of the time goes to here, but this 1% goes over here, and it's not going to be able to cope with even things like that. So I think it'll take, if anything, some of that manual entry away, but that just gives you more time to then focus on the commercial adding value element. So it's never going to replace it.
I mean, the way the clients I think it will eventually get rid of potentially are very small self-assessment, self-employed clients that have all their income going through their bank anyway, and who are quite happy to report on a cash basis. I think those people are potentially going to get hoovered up by automated systems that might be quite capable of then just quickly adding up expenses and adding up income from the bank statements, because they'll get the bank feed straight into it, and then automatically, saying this is the bill, pay it to, do you want to pay? Yes. And to be honest, I think particularly with kind of MTD coming in, those are perhaps the clients that accountants probably don't really want, because it's a lot of bookkeeping, a lot of record keeping for not much payoff. But I do think those sort of clients might end up disappearing. But like I said, that's just more emphasis on why it's important to develop those other skills and to develop that general business acumen, and to try and be able to advise clients better and show that you're offering value. But
now, just before we run out of time, because I know me and Lee always like to talk, we always go over time, which is more than fine by me. But we do promise 20 minutes, which I don't think we've ever kept to that.
No, I think we're 30.
So yeah, two things that are happening this week, if you don't already know. So the FAB event starts on Wednesday. That's in Birmingham. And I will be there talking on stage 3 times, twice about AML and one about the practice. So giving you some insights on the roller coaster journey that has been running my own practice from scratch with no clients. And also the other thing to mention is that this week, I can't believe I'm saying this after so long, but this week, the course that I have been promising for forever and a day is finally going to be released. So for anybody who doesn't know what that course is, it is an AML accountability course, and you've all been asking for it, let's say, for at least 18 months now. The course is finally built. It is CPD verified, so you'll get those CPD points that you require for your qualifications. And yeah, just watch this space for some more news. Cannot wait to release that. And I'm also just looking forward to the time saving and also helping a few people sleep better at night. So yeah, cannot wait. So anyway, Lee, have you got anything else to add before we finish today?
No, just a quick one, just for people to maybe have a look if they're interested in the consultation that was announced with the budget on raising standards tax advice market. It's the welcoming responses from tax agents and clients. So it's certainly worth having a look at, because it's about regulating tax agents and making sure. One of the proposals is to make sure tax agents are all members of professional bodies. So it's certainly worth something commenting on if you're thinking about going into practice yourself, and shape the future of your profession. So
we'll share that in the group underneath the comments, in the Facebook group, and also on the YouTube channel in the description, so that you've got that, or in the comment section. But yeah, other than that, Lee, I'll let you go, and we'll catch up again next week on our weekly coffee chat. Make sure to bring your cup.
I'll bring some sauce if you want. Yes.
Oh, right, and I'll see you all in Birmingham on Wednesday. Take care, everybody.
See ya.